There are stars that die without sound, great burning worlds collapsing into silence, their last light fading into the endless black. There are empires that end the same way, not with thunder or flame, but with the quiet forgetting of names once spoken with reverence. In the far cradle of Mars, beneath skies of rust and iron storms, there was once an age when the Mechanicum stood eternal. Its forges roaring like the breath of titans, its knowledge vaster than constellations. Yet even then, even in its zenith, a whisper of decay lingered, a truth so subtle that only those who dreamed of futures remembered it. All things are forgotten given time. And in the shadow of that truth, a single child was born to steel and flesh, one who would try to defy the fading of memory itself. My friend, before we journey deeper into this myth of galaxies and broken gods, know this: we truly love and care for you. Your presence here matters. You are welcome in this space. Before we begin the story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from and what time is it there? Now grab your coffee and let's get started. Mars in those days was a cathedral of machinery. Endless arteries of metal wove beneath its red crust, glowing with molten rivers of industry. Choirs of binary prayers echoed in the minds of priest engineers, and among them walked the adepts of the Mechanicum, the red-robed shepherds of knowledge, half flesh, half machine, more myth than mortal. From the great forge temple Delmora Magna, beneath a vault carved with the constellations of forgotten worlds, came the infant Kairos. His birth was not marked by celebration. The Mechanicum did not honor births as miracles. His mother's name was catalogued, a death that followed noted, archived, and then erased from relevance. But something about the infant made the attending magi hesitate, not with sentiment, but calculation. Kairos did not scream. His eyes, newborn and unmarred by augmentation, opened and focused, truly focused, upon the sacred cog Mechanicum above him, as though recognizing it. It was said that his gaze held awareness, not just instinct. It is difficult to say whether legends begin in truth or in hindsight. But those who witnessed it began to whisper the machine god had placed intention into this child. He was taken into the care of Magos lector Seraphil, a being so augmented that only a sliver of his original human jaw remained, framed by wreaths of luminescent wicked entrails. Seraphil was known not for cruelty nor compassion, but precision. Every student under him had a purpose, and he forged minds with the same severity that others forged steel. Kairos grew in halls of gear song and incense, surrounded by towering engines and the hum of endless data. His early lessons were not letters or numbers, but instruction in knowing the shape of logic, knowing the rhythm of machine prayer, knowing the weight of memory. For the Mechanicum believed memory to be the closest thing to divinity, a perfect, unchanging recording of truth. Yet Kairos noticed something others did not. The archives changed, not visibly, not intentionally, but slowly data was rewritten, corrupted, overwritten by newer records. Histories were streamlined, names vanished. Deeds once monumental became footnotes, and even Seraphil, thousands of years old, spoke of ancient triumphs with a vagueness that unsettled Kairos. One evening, under the cold glow of the hollow projectors, Kairos asked, "Magos lector, why does memory fade? Data is eternal." Seraphil paused, not with hesitation but calculation. "A memory," he answered, his voice modulated into a choir of metallic tones, "is a function of identity. An identity is unstable. Even steel erodes given ages enough. The universe cares little for remembrance, but we record everything," Kairos insisted. "We record," Seraphil said, "but we do not retain." Kairos did not understand. Not then, not until the silence played. It began on the forge world of Hesperia, a red jewel of industry, home to 1 billion mechanists and legions of Skitarii. At first, the transmissions were simply confused. The planetary command AIs sent reports with missing timestamps. The planetary governor repeated statements as though unaware she had spoken them moments before. Entire teams of tech priests would stop mid-process and continue tasks begun hours prior, unaware they had paused at all. Then the voices stopped entirely. Warships arrived to investigate. They found no war, no plague, no devastation. The people of Hespera 7 simply no longer knew themselves. They wandered the streets uninjured, unstarving, but empty, like walking vessels without purpose, without identity, without memory. Their minds had faded. Their histories had been erased. not by disease, nor by weapon, by time itself accelerating beyond comprehension, sweeping memory clean like wind through dust. Kairos heard of this, and something inside him cracked open, not in fear of death, but fear of forgetting. He imagined a future where even Seraphal's teachings were dust, where the machine god's liturgies dissolved into silence, where all wars, all loves, all triumphs faded to nothing. What was the point of empire if time devoured? What was the point of life if memory, the soul's last proof it lived, could be erased? Kairos began to dream, and his dreams were full of hollow stars. Seraphil noticed the boy's change. Kairos was no longer intrigued by knowledge, he was haunted by the impermanence of it. He walked the forge halls alone at night, running his fingers across metal in silence, as if memorizing its cold. One night, Seraphil found him on the observatory balcony, watching the starfields shimmer above Mars' dust storms. "The universe is not dying," Seraphil said quietly, standing beside him. "Were ye?" Kairos didn't look away from the stars. Everything ends, even memory, even gods. Seraphil's mechadendrites folded behind him like wings. To seek permanence is to seek disappointment. The galaxy flows in cycles, creation, decay, renewal. Acceptance is strength. Kairos finally turned, and there was something new in his eyes. Not fear, defiance. And no, acceptance is surrender. And I will not surrender. I will not become forgotten. Seraphil studied him in silence, a long, emotionless, calculating stillness. "You seek immortality," he said, "not as accusation, but prophecy." Kairos answered, "I seek to remember, and to be remembered." Years passed. Kairos grew not only in mind, but stature and design. He replaced his lungs with synthetic respiration chambers, his optic nerves with crystalline memory conduits. His body remained partly flesh, not because he resisted the machine, but because he feared losing the part of him that felt. For how can one remember meaning if one no longer has emotion to assign to it? Seraphil watched these changes silently, but emotion, faint, buried beneath centuries of augmentation, stirred. He had raised Kairos as a project. He had not meant to raise him as a son. Yet something like pride or dread took root in him. Because the child was no longer simply bright, he was driven, and drive is a kind of power that does not fade. The day Kairos was named Archon Designate of Ontological Systems was the day the forge bells of Dalmora Magna rang for an entire... The Mechanicum does not ring bells for anything that does not matter. Kairos stood before the conclave, red robes trailing behind him like flowing rivers of blood across steel flooring. Thousands of lenses and eyes and scanning arrays focused upon him. He was applauded not by hands, but by the thunder of data streams and chanting Benharic hymns. Yet even in triumph, his gaze drifted to the stars beyond the cathedral ceiling, to Hespera 7, empty memory, to the inevitability of forgetting. He whispered to himself, not in prayer, but promise. If the universe erases us, then I will carve memory into eternity. I will build a mind that does not fade. I will preserve what it means to be. Thus began the first step toward transcendence and the first step toward tragedy. For every empire that rises against oblivion must eventually confront the truth. To defeat forgetting, one must sacrifice what is worth remembering. The forge heat of Dalmora Magna never waned. Day and night meant little under the red skies of Mars. Time here was measured instead by the rhythm of machinery, the pulsing of reactors, the stamp of assembly lines, the droning chant of servitors who had long forgotten their own name. It was in this world of industry and prayer that Kairos grew into his purpose, guided by the stern, calculating presence of Magos Lector Seraph. To those outside the Mechanicum, Seraphil might have seemed inhuman, his tall, skeletal frame supported by articulated servo limbs, his voice layered in metallic harmonics, his thoughts flickering faster than speech. But within the endless steel labyrinth, Seraphil was spoken of with reverence. He had shaped archmagi, lords of forge worlds, and even high emissaries to Terra. His name carried weight, yet Kairos was the only one he taught alone. There was no classroom, no structured recitation of principles. Instead, Seraphil taught by task, by placing the young adept before impossible problems and observing how he tried to solve. At 12, Kairos was commanded to relattice a fractured plasma conductor without ever touching it. he succeeded by crafting drone-guided micro-instruments controlled through thought link alone. At 14, he redesigned an entire heat distribution grid after discovering inconsistencies in ancient blueprint logic. And at 16, he debated with Seraphil for 3 continuous days on the divine nature of the machine god, and did not lose, yet Seraphil showed no pride. Pride implied ownership, and nothing in the Mechanicum was owned, only used, repurposed, and understood. But there were moments, brief, fleeting, when something like emotion flickered in the Mago's ancient eyes. One such moment occurred when Seraphil brought Kairos into the Hall of Forgotten Astronomies. In these office, the chamber was vast, circular, and dark. Above them stretched a dome of hollow constellations, stars long dead, planets swallowed by nova or silence. Their light persisted here, frozen in memory. These, Seraphil said, his mechadendrites folding with ritual reverence, are the worlds we have lost. Kairos looked up and felt the weight of eternity. How many? Asked quietly. 1,642, Seraphil replied. Though the exact count is uncertain, Kairos frowned. How can something recorded be uncertain? Seraphil's lenses adjusted, irises clicking. Because the records of their fall are not complete. Some speak of war, others famine, others simply fade. No cause attributed, no memory preserved. Kairos turned slowly, staring at stars whose names meant nothing now. All civilizations, buried not by violence but by forgetting. This was the wound he could not accept. What is the point of knowledge if time erases it? He whispered. Seraphil responded without hesitation. The point is not permanence. The point is pursuit. Kairos did not answer, not because he felt the answer was insufficient. Incomplete. Wrong. The Mechanicum revered memory. The Omnissiah was understood not as a god of creation, but a god of perfect knowledge held eternally. Yin, the Mechanicum forgot. If data eroded like sand, then the machine god was a liar. Kairos did not say this aloud. But the thought rooted itself deep and unyielding. Years later, Kairos was given his first independent directive, assist in the restoration of the Cantus Vector, an ancient starship discovered drifting beyond the orbit of Jupiter. It had once been a grand vessel of the Mechanicum, a traveling cathedral, a moving forge, a vault of knowledge, but it had gone silent for 3 centuries, presumed lost. He hesitated, then nodded. She touched the lattice with a fingertip and the projection shimmered. I've seen memory decay, she murmured. I've watched entire worlds reduced to half-remembered myth. It hurts. But sometimes the beauty is in remembering that we remembered it all. Kairos turned toward her fully then. What if we could preserve everything? He asked. Every thought, every feeling, every meaning. Forever. Astra held his gaze. Would you still be human? She asked softly. Kairos' heart, still flesh, still beating, stumbled. He didn't answer. He didn't know. The forge world turned. Wars flickered in distant constellations. Fortresses rose, fell, rose again. He worked through night cycles and prayer cycles, through exhaustion and rebirth, through doubt and fury. Seraphil watched but did not interfere. Astra stayed not to guide him, but to keep him tethered, to remind him of warmth. And slowly, painfully, inevitably, something changed. Kairos' mind began to expand beyond the scale of human thought. His augmented neural cores synced into planetary data streams. He began to remember not simply what he learned, but the memory of remembering itself. And Seraphil, ancient and near immortal, saw what Kairos did not. The boy he raised was beginning to slip away. Not from madness, but from humanity. The forge had raised a god. But gods, once born, do not remain gentle, not forever. The forge temple of Dalmora Magna rose like a mountain of iron and fire, its vaulted ceilings shrouded in incense smoke and ionized metal vapor. Every hour of every day, countless machine hymns reverberated through its endless chambers, voices of the Mechanicum chanting Binharic prayers, augurs humming liturgical diagnostics, reactors roaring like the hearts of sleeping dragons. It was here that Kairos' transformation progressed, not in sudden leaps, but in steady, deliberate increments that reshaped flesh and mind alike. The choir of iron angels, an elite order of Skidora modified beyond recognition, served as guardians of the... Their bodies were steel sculpted, their faces expressionless masks of iron, their voices replaced with harmonic vox tones that resonated like distant chimes. They were living weapons, stripped of individual identity, yet they moved with purpose that felt eerily graceful. Cairo studied them for weeks. Not because he desired their power, but because he feared what they represented. A future where the self was no longer the architect of thought, but a shadow flickering behind machinery. He watched a group of them drilling in the central hall, synchronized movements that were too perfect to be merely physical. Their neural systems were linked, their minds resonating as one. If one thought, all acted. If one felt pain, none reacted into surrendered. A priest beside him spoke reverently. Behold the choir. Their individuality has been offered to the Omnissiah in exchange for perfect function. Cairo said nothing, but inside him rebellion stirred. Was perfection worth the death? Was immortality meaningful if it erased the one who sought it? Yet even as the question formed, another voice rose against it, the one that feared Hesperomates, the Cantus Vector, the worlds lost to silence, added to be something eternal and someone forgotten. Days bled into one another as Cairo submerged himself deeper into the Nemo engine project. The engine had become his world, a vast neural lattice designed not merely to record a memory, but to preserve conscious continuity. It was a machine meant to defy entropy, to trap the essence of thought in an unending pattern. But Kairos knew something was missing: emotion. Not the crude impulses of flesh, but the spark that gives memory meaning. Without emotion, memory was merely data. Without significance, immortality was sterile. He stared at the shimmering lattice projected in the air before him. It pulsed like a heart of glass, complex, beautiful, and incomplete. You're forcing it, Astra said, standing at his side. He didn't look up. Precision is necessary. The lattice must hold shape under computational stress. If memory collapses... I'm not speaking of the lattice, she interrupted gently. I'm speaking of you. He paused. Her presence had become a constant, soft where the world around him was metallic, calm where the forge was relentless. She did not try to correct him or distract him. She simply existed near him, and that was enough to remind him of everything he was in danger of forgetting. You haven't rested in 3 cycles, she continued. Your systems are compensating, but the mind, your mind, needs space to breathe. He turned toward her slowly, studying her expression. Flesh and emotion unaugmented and unfiltered, a reminder of mortality and of meaning. Rest invites forgetting, he said softly. Astra shook her head. I know, rest allows remembering. The distinction struck him deeper than he wished to admit. She walked closer to the projection, tracing the shape of one fractal pattern without touching it. Do you know why some memories stay vivid while others fade? She asked. He considered. Emotional resonance. Memory retention is tied to hormonal encoding. I know, she said. The memories stay when they matter. Meaning is the anchor, not structure. Cairo stared at her, and something shifted. The Nemo engine did not need to preserve the mind. It needed to preserve the meaning of the mind. Astra had unknowingly given him missing key. But understanding the truth did not solve the question of how to encode meaning. How does one preserve not only thought, but the emotional gravity that gives thought weight? He realized then that he needed to observe minds that had already undergone such transformation. The choir of iron angels, the Skitarii, beings who had surrendered the self, yet still moved with purpose. Perhaps somewhere hidden within their neural resonance, fragments of identity endured. Perhaps even in their unity there were echoes of what once. With Seraphal's approval, reluctant, unreadable, Kairos received access to the choir's neural archives. He entered the sanctuary where the angels underwent calibration. The chamber was silent save for the hum of energy fields. The iron angels stood motionless, like statues waiting for command. Kairos reached out with his neural link filaments, connecting his consciousness to theirs. The moment the circuit completed, his mind erupted. Not in pain, but in overwhelming clarity. He felt countless lifetimes compressed into a single moment. Memories of war fronts under shattered stars, battles forded continents, terror, triumph, and beneath the joy, silence, identity. But traces of emotion remained, buried, weak, flickering like coals beneath frost. A memory surfaced unbidden, a voice, warm, familiar, a child laughing, a name spoken with love. Then the memory collapsed, overwritten by Unity Protocol. But it had been there, meaning persisted. Kairos staggered back, disconnecting. His heart raced, not with fear, but with revelation. The choir were not empty. They were echoes, echoes of self, and echoes were enough to rebuild a whole. When Kairos returned to the Nemo engine's chamber, he did not speak. He did not explain. He simply worked. Where once he had chased perfection, now he pursued resonance. Where once he sought immortality as continuity, now he sought immortality as remembrance. Astra remained beside him, silent and watchful. Seraphil observed from afar, his expression unreadable. But something in his stance, the stillness of it, suggested caution, perhaps even dread. Kairos began integrating emotional patterning into the engine's neural weave. Not hormonal, not chemical, symbolic, meaning encoded not through reaction but through association. Memory defined not by structure but by significance. He realized something astonishing. Meaning could be measured. It could be quantified, preserved, replicated. He could build immortality, not sterile, not empty, but alive. For the first time in years, Kairos smiled, but progress invites envy. And the Mechanicum was an empire built not only on devotion, but ambition. Word of his breakthrough spread quickly, too quickly. Whispers first, then observations, then interference. The first confrontation came quiet. Magos Roth, a senior overseer of neural sanctuaries, visited Kairos under guise of inquiry. His robes shimmered with gold thread machine sigils, an ostentatious display of authority. "We have heard," Roth said, voice smooth and serpentine, "that you are attempting a new approach to consciousness preservation." Kairos responded with politeness, but not transparency. "A research evolves. Understanding grows." Roth's optical lenses narrowed, a be wary icon, Kairos. "Innovation without supervision is deviation, and deviation is dangerous." Kairos did not flinch. "What threatens the Mechanicum more?" he asked quietly. "The loss of memory or the pursuit of understanding?" Roth smiled, a thin surgical curve. "Ambition," he answered, "threatens everything." He left without another word. Astra placed a hand on Kairos' sleeve, human, warm grounding. "Be careful," she whispered. Kairos looked at her for a long moment, and for the first time he allowed himself to feel the truth he had buried. He did not fear death. He feared losing her. The night cycle came. The forwards quieted. The choir of iron angels dimmed their awareness, and Kairos sat alone before the engine. He thought of the forgotten worlds. The empty minds of Ender or the Savannah's silent terminal. The echo of a child's laughter in the choir's fractured memory. Fractured memory. Astra's hand on his sleeve. He whispered not to the machine god but to himself. "I will remember, and I will be remembered. Not as a god, not as steel, but as meaning." And the Nemo engine pulsed in answer, like a heart beginning to beat. The Nemo engine grew. What began as an elegant lattice of thought preservation soon expanded into a structure that filled an entire sanctum beneath Dolmora Magna. The chamber itself had to be reforged to contain it. Conduits of memory. Plasma threaded through vaulted ceilings, neural conduits suspended like constellations of glass nerves, and beneath it all, a foundation of crystalline logic cores pulsing like a heartbeat. The forge priests who labored there did so under strict silence, not by command, but by reverence. They felt, though they could not explain why, that they were participating in the birth of something sacred. Kairos watched the engine awake. He worked with precision, with understanding, with patience kindled by purpose. This was no longer merely a system to record memory. It was a vessel to hold meaning, identity, self in all its complexity, to defeat the forgetting that devoured whole worlds, to defy the silence between stars. Yet, each time he activated the engine's lattice, he felt something like grief inside it, a faint ache like longing. Meaning could be preserved, but meaning could also mourn. Astra saw it too. She stood on the observation platform, hands clasped behind her back, eyes soft with knowing. "You've given it the capacity to remember," she murmured, "but not the capacity to rest." Kairos looked up at her. He knew what she implied, though he did not wish to face it. "An eternal mind may drown in memory," she continued. "Without forgetting there can peace. Without ending no peace." Kairos turned away. A meaning is lost when memory decays. The preservation of meaning requires permanence. Astra replied, "May require the death of change, even the death of self." There was silence between them, not the silence of argument, but the silence of two truths standing irreconcilable. Kairos felt it like a fracture. He did not answer. Instead, he returned to the engine. In the cycles that followed, the Mechanicum's high orders took notice, not of the engine itself, but of the change it brought to the Forge world. Tech priests began treating memory with heightened reverence. Libraries of recorded thought swelled. Magi debated immortality not as forbidden arrogance, but as achievable doctrine. New sects formed, some devoted to Kairos, others wary of him. One evening, in the grand conclave hall of the Forge Masters, Kairos was summoned to present his theory to the Parliament of the Cogs. They gathered like statues carved of red metal, voices carried in harmonic vox tones. Above them, a hololithic projection of the Nemo engine shimmered in solemn grandeur. Kairos stood before them, robes falling like flowing rust, optical implants glimmering with pale blue light. "The universe does not destroy what we build," he began. "A time does. Entropy does. Memory itself erodes not through failure of recording, but through the slow decay of significance. I propose a solution, one that preserves not only the structure of thought, but its meaning." He spoke of emotional resonance encoding, of symbolic memory structures, of continuity of identity beyond biological lifespan. Some priests listened with awe, others with concern. One whispered through a hidden vox channel, "He speaks as a past the machine god." Another responded, "Perhaps he seeks to become him." After the presentation, Magos Roth stepped forward. His red robes gleamed with ceremonial gold circuitry, his face expressionless save for the faintest tightening around the Archon Kairos, Roth said, voice smooth and cold. "Raw innovation is admirable, but you are proposing to elevate the self beyond its ordained limits. Immortality belongs to the Omnissiah alone. To pursue it for oneself, his optical lens is glinted. His heresy, the hall held its breath." Kairos did not flinch. If the machine god is eternal, then to preserve memory is to honor him. To surrender to forgetting is to defy him. A murmur rippled across the gallery. Roth's voice sharpened. "Your logic is ambition veiled in piety, and ambition is the most dangerous engine of all." Kairos met his gaze without fear, then let the Omnissiah judge. Roth's stare lingered a moment too long, and Kairos recognized something in it. Not righteousness, but envy. Later, in the lower archives, Astra sat beside Kairos as he ran diagnostics on the engine. The crystalline lattice flickered with slow rhythmic pulses, a steady, patient heartbeat of memory. "You challenged the conclave openly," she said, voice low. "That was dangerous." "A truth is dangerous," Kairos replied softly. "So is pride." He did not respond at first. "Then Roth fears I will take what he believes belongs only to gods." Astra shook her head. "No. He fears that you already have." Kairos paused. A tremor of uncertainty flickered through him. "You believe that?" he asked quietly. Astra looked at him not as a priest, not as a scholar, but simply as a person. "I believe," she said, "that you are a man trying to save what cannot be saved, and that you will destroy yourself if you succeed." Kairos inhaled, a slow, controlled breath, though half his lungs were machine now. "I cannot allow memory to fade," he whispered. "I cannot allow worlds to disappear. I cannot allow what matters to be lost to silence." Astra's expression softened with sorrow. "Each rose things end. That is what makes them precious." He closed his eyes. He could not accept that. Not then. Not ever. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. While reconstructing the choir of Iron Angel's neural resonance maps, Kairos discovered a recurring pattern, something subtle, something imperfect, something deeply human, a fragment of song. Not literal song, but a rhythm, an emotional motif encoded in neural association clusters, a memory of belonging. The choir no longer remembered their names, their families, their origin. The crystal matrices inside flickered with memory pattern weights, echoes of lives studied to calibrate emotional resonance courses. If the core overloaded, the engine wouldn't just be destroyed, the memories inside would be erased. Hespera 7, the Cantus vector, the choir's echoes, everything learned would die. Kairos slammed a hand onto the emergency vent control. No effect, manual override, locked, secondary purge. "This is Roth," I was shocked with fury. He planted a recursive trigger in the lattice's access code. Its erasing meaning structure. Kairos turned, and something inside him broke. This was not rivalry. This was desecration. He forced open the lattice chamber door. Heat poured out, but he ignored it. The crystal core glowed bright, like a star about to burn itself apart. If it reached overload peak, the entire forge sublevel would vaporize. Kairos tore off his protective gauntlet and thrust his bare hand into the access conduit, letting raw memory fire burn him as he linked directly with the engine's pattern matrix. Astra screamed his name, but he didn't hear her. He dove into the lattice. The pain was indescribable, his mind filled with thousands of fractured memory echoes all at once. A child's laughter, a soldier's final breath, a mother's goodbye, a star collapsing in time-lapse, a quiet moment between two lovers forgotten by history. He pushed through the flood. He found the sabotage algorithm, a serrated knot of recursive logic designed to collapse all meaning resonance, and he crushed it. The overload dropped. Heat dissipated. The lights flickered back. Kairos fell to his knees, smoke rising from his burned arm. His skin, what little remained, was charred black. Flesh would need replacement, but the engine lived, the memories lived. He exhaled once. Then everything felt quiet, too quiet. His acolytes were dead. Their bodies lay where they had been working, not burned, not broken. Still, their minds wiped clean. Empty vessels, just like Hespera Vaevan. Astra choked back a sob. Kairos stood slow and deliberate, burned arm hanging at his side like something already dead. "Aroth," he whispered. It wasn't anger, it was something colder. Certainty Roth did not hide. He stood in the processional hall, surrounded by honor guards and the soft hum of servo skulls. He had already crafted his narrative. He had already prepared his defense. He bowed as Kairos approached. In an elaborate, arrogant gesture, "Archon Kairos," he said, "was informed of a catastrophic failure in one of your unauthorized research labs. Tragic, truly. Innovation is a fragile thing." Kairos walked forward, slow and deliberate. His burned arm twitched, nerve ending sparking. Astra remained behind him, hands clenched, tears burning silently in her eyes. "You murdered them," Kairos said. Roth placed a hand on his breastplate, feigning shock. "I know. If anything, your project's instability." Kairos moved, not with fury, but with purpose. His hand shot forward, clamping onto Roth's jaw. Servo's strength crushed bone and steel alike. Roth tried to speak. No sound came. His guards lunged. Kairos' eyes flashed. The choir of Iron Angels stationed nearby turned toward Kairos, but toward the guards. They raised their weapons in silent synchrony, blocking the path, not by command, but by recognition. Meaning had resonance, and they had felt his. Kairos tore Roth's jaw free, metal and flesh-rending with a sickening crack. The Makos fell to the ground, choking on sparks and blood. Kairos knelt beside him. "You erased them." "You erased meaning. You destroyed memory. You committed the greatest sin the Mechanicum has ever feared." Ralph's remaining eye widened in terror. Kairos did not kill him quickly. He severed the neural implants one by one, leaving the body intact but the mind empty. Ralph lived, but he would never think again. He would never. Astra turned away. Even Seraphil, arriving moments later, stopped in silence, not out of shock, but out of knowing that a line had been crossed that could never be reformed. Kairos stood slowly, blood and coolant dripping from his fingertips. "There will be conclave judgment," Seraphil said softly. Kairos did not flinch. "They may judge, but you will not remain here," Seraphil replied. It was not threat, it was truth, a silent sentence. "Exile." Kairos nodded once. His voice was quiet, steady, absolute. "Then I will build elsewhere." Astra stepped forward without hesitation. "I go with." Seraphil looked at her, eyes full of something ancient and wounded. "You understand the cost." She nodded. Yes. Kairos met Seraphil's gaze. Father and son, though neither would ever speak the word aloud. "You could come," Kairos said. Seraphil lowered his mechadendrite wings, expression unreadable. No," he whispered. "I must remain. I must remember you as you were." Kairos closed his eyes. That wound cut deeper than Roth's sabotage ever could. The Forge World watched as Kairos left. He did not flee. He walked through the great gates of Dalmora Magna, through halls where tech priests bowed their heads not in reverence, but in awe and dread. The choir of Iron Angels followed, their footfalls echoing like the drumbeats of war. Astra walked beside Kairos, eyes full. Above them, the forge smoke parted just enough to reveal the stars. Kairos looked up. He did not speak. He did not pray. He simply remembered. And that was enough to ignite a destiny that would one day burn galaxies. Exile from Mars is not like exile from any other world. To be cast out from the Forge planet is to be severed from the pulse of the machine god itself, to lose the endless hymn of gears and prayer that thrums through the red soil and iron halls. But Kairos did not leave as one defeated. He left as one who had already begun to reshape himself into something beyond the boundaries of Mars doctrine. His ship, the Orison of Embers, drifted from the planet's orbit with slow, solemn grace. It was not built for war, though it could defend itself if pressed. Its hull was dark and angular, marked by sigils older than the Imperium, symbols from pre-Unity Mars, when forges sang songs of invention rather than hierarchy. The choir of iron angels stood silent at its flanks, guardians not of state but of purpose. Astra remained by Kairos' side. Seraphil's final words still lingered like dust settled in the lungs. Not condemnation, not forgiveness, only remembrance. Kairos told himself it was enough, but as Mars shrank behind him, a glowing ember on the edge of eternity, he felt something strange. Not regret, not fear, emptiness. The kind that opens when a chapter ends before a new one has a name. They traveled for weeks through the silent dark, mapping hyperspace fractures and graviton tides, searching for something lost and forgotten. Kairos did not seek safety. He sought distance from doctrine, from oversight, from the judgment of the conclave. He needed a place untouched by memory decay, a place he could build the Nemo engine anew, stronger, clearer beyond the reach of those who feared it. That place revealed itself not through intent, but through pattern. Astra discovered it first, tracing faint signal remnants hidden in the sub-frequency echoes of old Mechanicum star charts, a world once marked but never colonized, a world with no name, only a designation, Arc Primus Null. Kairos stared at the pulsing glyph on the holomap. A world forgotten, a world never remembered. Perfect. The ship descended through violent storms into a landscape of metallic dunes and fractured stone, scars from ancient orbital bombardments long erased from recorded history. The sky was pale and vast, streaked with clouds of luminescent dust. Beneath their feet, the ground hummed faintly, not with dormant machinery buried deep beneath the crust. Kairos felt it instantly, a world of silence and memory. He knelt, placing his hand upon the metallic sand. "This place remembers," he murmured. Astra stood beside him, her cloak fluttering in the dry wind. "Remembers what?" Kairos exhaled. "What has been forgotten?" They established a forge. Not grand, not ceremonial, functional, efficient, alive. The forge took shape within a colossal valley carved by ancient glaciers, walls of black stone rising like cathedral pillars, sky open wide above them. Great smelters were built from the remains of crashed ships and scavenged alloys. The choir of iron angels cleared ground, erected pylons, installed reactor cores. They moved without complaint, without question. Yet Astra watched them with quiet attention. "Do they remember anything of themselves?" she asked one evening, her voice soft in the forge light. Kairos paused mid-calibration of a neural distribution conduit. "They remember meaning," he said, "not identity." "That is a delicate distinction," she replied. Kairos nodded. "Yes, but identity can be rebuilt if meaning survives. Meaning is the spine. Identity is the muscle that grows back around it." Astra looked at him then, not with awe, but with sorrow. "You speak like someone who fears being remembered incorrectly." Kairos froze. She had seen him. Truly seen him. He looked away. He whispered. New Nemo engine took shape slowly. No longer a single lattice, but a network. A cathedral of memory built across the valley floor. Crystal nodes rose like monoliths, connected by conduits of shimmering light. The machinery hummed with a resonance that felt almost organic, like a living tapestry of consciousness waiting to unfold. Yet the engine remained dormant. It needed a test subject, a mind to preserve, a life to anchor. Kairos did not hesitate. He approached Astra as she transcribed data tables near a memory pillar. "I will be the first," he said. She turned. "Oh no." The word was soft, but absolute. Kairos stepped closer. "Oh, you know why," she interrupted. "If you enter the engine now, you may not return. Your mind will be preserved, yes, but will yourself remain? Your instincts, your warmth, your—" She stopped. He finished. "My humanity," Astra nodded. Kairos looked at the engine, its crystal nodes pulsing like a waiting heart. If I do not test it myself, I cannot ask another to do so. Astra said quietly, then what are we preserving? Kairos closed his eyes. She was right. She had always been the echo of humanity inside him. But he could not stop, because now the memories of Hespera 7 haunted him constantly. Not as tragedy, but warning. He saw worlds dissolving into emptiness, people wandering as living ghosts, the galaxy aging into silence. Preservation was no longer ambition, it was necessity. But how to test the engine without risking identity? The answer arrived unexpectedly. During late-night diagnostics, Kairos noticed one of the choir lagging behind the others. Unit 7 designation lost long ago. Its neural resonance flickered intermittently, like a candle fighting wind. Kairos accessed its memory signatures. There it was again, the same emotional fragment he had discovered before. A fragment of love, a child's laughter, a warm hand in another's. Meaning, still glowing, fragile but unbroken. The choir unit was dying, not physically. Its body was immaculate steel, but the last ember of its identity was fading. Kairos knew what must be done. He summoned Astra. She saw the unit and her breath caught. You want to transfer its memory, she whispered. Kairos nodded. It is the least invasive test. The mind is already fragmenting. If we do nothing, its meaning will die. If the engine works, its meaning will live. Astra looked at the silent soldier of steel. Let her choose, she murmured. Then nodded. He kneels before Unit 7, no command. Only presence. Do you want to remember? Kairos asked softly. The Iron Angel did not speak, but it moved, a single motion. They reinforced pylon arrays, calibrated void shield matrices, checked ammunition stores, yet Kairos watched them not as soldiers, but as echoes. Each one once had a life. Each one once had a purpose beyond obedience. Each one had meaning. And perhaps, if he had time, he could help them regain fragments of themselves. But time was no longer a resource he had in abundance. The message from Seraphil came again. Not repeated. Replayed. Kairos listened once more. Seraphil's voice remained level, but faint distortion in the vox chords betrayed strain. Regret, sorrow, fear. A Kairos, hear me. The conclave is unified for the first time in centuries. The Fabricator General himself has sanctioned Directive Hellion. They will come with Legio Titanica. You cannot remain on Arc Primus null. They will raise the world to glass if necessary. Flee. Do not defend. Do not escalate. If you run, there may still be time to salvage what you've built. Kairos closed his eyes. Seraphil, the mentor who had shaped him, guided him, raised him, was telling him to run. It was a kindness. A final gift, but Kairos could not accept it, because the Nemo engine was not just a machine, it was a promise. If he fled and destroyed it to prevent capture, humanity would remain subject to forgetting. The silence would come again. The galaxy would empty itself of meaning until nothing remained but dust and hollow stars. To flee would be to allow eternity to die. He opened his eyes. No, Kairos whispered. Astra heard him. She placed her hand near his, but not touching, close enough that warmth bridged the space between. Then we choose where to stand, she said. Kairos nodded. Not victory, not defiance, acceptance. They made for Mars, not as fugitives, though they were, not as supplicants, though some might have prayed. They went as witnesses, to speak truth where truth had been buried. The orison of embers cut through the void with engines burning blue-white, choir phalanxes in silent readiness, Astra at Kairos' side, her eyes full of a grief that had not yet taken shape. The red planet grew steadily in the viewport, vast, ancient, burning with memory. Kairos felt its gravity not in mass, but in meaning. He had been forged here, raised here, judged here. He would not be erased here. They did not approach the capital forge cities. That would have been suicide. Instead, they descended toward a region of fractured mesas, one of the old dry oceans, long since converted into slag fields and refinery pits. The landing zone was quiet. Too quiet. Kairos knew better than to trust silence here. The choir disembarked first, their armored feet crunching against iron-dusted stone. Astra followed, cloaks snapping in the sharp Martian wind. Kairos stepped last, inhaling the metallic tang of the air that had once been home. Seraphil was waiting. He stood alone. No guards, no augmetic slaves, no retinue. His mechadendrites hung still like morning veils. Only the desert wind moved between them. Kairos walked forward. Astra remained behind, but close. The choir stood perfectly silent. When Seraphil spoke, there was no mechanical harmonics layered into his voice. Only the man who remained beneath the machine. You should not have come. Kairos studied the ancient metal face, the single surviving fragment of human jaw, the faint tiredness in optical lenses that no eye should have ever been able to express. You warned me, Kairos said. I listened. I chose anyway. Seraphil's mechadendrites twitched softly. Sadness, not threat. You have built something extraordinary, he said. Something I do not believe even the Conclave fully understands. Kairos waited. Seraphil continued. I have failed you. Kairos stiffened. Seraphil stepped forward, not with authority, but with grief. I should have taught you to lose. I should have taught you that some things must be allowed to end. That to preserve everything is to preserve nothing. That memory must fade so meaning may be reborn. Kairos' voice broke, not with sorrow but resolve. And I should have taught you that meaning is lost when memory is erased. There it was. Two philosophies, irreconcilable. Seraphil bowed his head. Then we are already at war. Kairos nodded once. Yes. Then the horizon ignited. A sound like mountains breaking rolled across the sands. Legio Titanica. Colossi of steel and fire, striding like gods of war. Each step a quake, each movement a sermon in the language of annihilation. Astra exhaled a trembling sound. The choir of iron angels shifted formation, silent and ready. Seraphil did not move. His voice was quiet. There is still one choice left. Kairos looked at him, knowing even before he spoke what the choice was. Destroy the Nemo engine, Seraphil said. And you'll do this and the Conclave may let you live. You and Astra both. They do not wish to kill you, they wish to stop you. Kairos closed his eyes. He saw Hespero Rye V, empty and wandering. He saw the Cantus Vector drifting in silence. He saw the choir's dying ember, saved only because of the engine. Then he saw the future, a future where meaning lived on. He opened his eyes. No, he whispered. Seraphil's optical lenses dimmed, grief crystallized into acceptance. Then this is goodbye. Kairos felt something break inside him. Astra took his hand. He held it, not to anchor himself, but to remember. The first blast struck the ground behind them, sending fire and molten stone into the sky as the Titans advanced. Kairos turned to Astra, to the choir, to Seraphil, to Mars, to everything he had been, and spoke the words that would ignite a war of remembrance. We hold the meaning. The angels of iron activated their weapons. The Titans drew their cannons, and the desert of Mars became the first battlefield of a memory that would not die. The sands of Mars burned. Heat shimmered across the shattered plain as Legio Titanica advanced, their colossal silhouettes framed in the dust haze like titans of a dead pantheon. Each footfall trembled through the crust, sending fractures racing across the ironstone ground. The choir of iron angels moved to meet them, not as equals, but as inevitabilities. They were not designed to win here. They were designed to hold. The orison of embers remained landed on a plateau overlooking the battlefield, its engines silent, its hull glinting in the red glow of the dying Martian sun. Astra stood at its ramp, observing the coming conflict with tightened jaw and clenched fists. She did not fear death, but she feared what Kairos might become to avoid it. Kairos, however, was not watching the battlefield. He was listening. The Voxnet was alive with the machine god's hymns. The Mechanicum did not speak during war, they sang. And the Titan's every movement was accompanied by layered Binharic chants, praise songs to the Omnissiah, encoded in fractal resonance. Kairos closed his eyes. He remembered standing in the conclave as a child, hearing those same hymns and believing them beautiful. Now they felt like chains. Seraphil stood beside him, mechadendrites folded like wings of mourning. He had not joined the choir. He had not called reinforcements. He had simply watched, the way an old sculptor watches a statue crack, knowing the break began long before the visible fracture. There is still time to leave, Seraphil said quietly. Kairos opened his eyes. There is no time left for retreat in anything. The Titans halted in perfect formation. Their reactor cores flared, casting shadows long enough to swallow mountains. A voice boomed across the plain, amplified through hundreds of vox horns resonant with machine authority. Archon Kairos Valthrine, you will submit to conclave judgment. Kairos stepped forward. Astra inhaled sharply, but did not fall. He raised his voice, not amplified, not modulated, simply spoken. "Oh no." The Titan's reactors howled, cannons rotated, the sands vibrated. Seraphal's voice dropped to a whisper. Kairos, you must understand, they do not fear the engine because it preserves memory. They fear it because it makes memory sovereign. Not inherited, not dictated, not controlled by creed or conclave. Kairos listened. He had always listened to Seraphal. But listening and agreeing were no longer the same. The machine god does not command memory, Kairos said softly. It imitates it. The Omnissiah is a symbol for continuity, but symbols are hollow when memory decays. Seraphal turned toward him, slowly, painfully. You speak as though the machine god is less than you. Kairos shook his head. Oh no, I speak as though the machine god is incomplete, and I intend to complete him. Seraphal froze, not in disbelief, but in recognition. This was not the child he raised. This was the result the Titan's cannons ignited. The choir charged. War erupted. The choir of Iron Angels met the first Titan barrage with perfect coordination, their formation fracturing into shifting fractal patterns to minimize casualties. Yet even perfect movement could not match the scale of a god engine. One blast vaporized 5 angels instantly, their bodies melting into slag upon the sand, but they did not scream. They could not. They had been built to serve without voice. Kairos felt the loss, not in grief but in me. Each fallen soldier was a memory lost twice. Once when their identity had been stripped, and once now when their echo risked fading. The Titans advanced. The angels struck. Chain blades screeched against adamantium plating. Plasma burst hammered joint anchor. The battlefield roared like a furnace at awakening, and Kairos turned away. Not in cowardice, but because this war would not be won in fire. This war would be won in memory. He walked toward the Vox relay spire, half buried in the mesa stone, a tower of rusted transmitter arrays used long ago to communicate across forged cities. If he could reach the inner sanctum, he could access the Void Basilica, the most forbidden vault on Mars. The place where the oldest memory of the Mechanicum was stored. The only place where he could prove his theory. If preserved memory already existed, then the Conclave's authority was not divine, it was that. Astra followed him, sprinting through debris and steam bursts as explosions shook the ground. A Titan's cannon blast shattered a plateau to their right, sending molten stone raining down around. Kairos shielded Astra with his body, his augmented frame absorbing heat that would have incinerated flesh. Her voice was strained but steady. "Tell me why we're going to the Basilica." Kairos did not answer instantly, because the truth was heavier than any weapon. The Basilica holds the prime mnemonic vault, the original Mechanicum archive. If the Conclave erased memories of past ages, then the silence is not fate. Astra's eyes widened. It was engineered. Kairos nodded once. She finished. Not just doctrine collapses. She finished. Tigers alive. Their authority, their godhood, the Titans roared behind them. The angels held, the sands burned. Kairos and Astra reached the Basilica gates. The entrance was a monolithic arch of black iron engraved with machine script older than Terra's unification. Kairos traced his hand across it, his burned arm aching with ghost pain. The gate recognized him, not by command code, by memory signature. It opened. The Basilica interior was silent. Vast vaults of crystal and memory pillars stretching like forests of frozen thought. Each pillar shimmered faintly with recorded consciousness. Voices of long-dead scholars, engineers, philosophers, people whose minds had been stored to preserve knowledge forever. Except the pillars were dark, dim, fading, their memories hollow. Astra stepped forward, breath trembling. They let them fade. Kairos walked deeper. He found the central pillar, a tower of translucent crystal the height of a Titan, glowing faintly at the core with a single spark, 1 mile. The light inside pulsed slow, tired, aching with centuries of endurance. Kairos placed his hand upon it. Astra held her breath. Seraphal bowed his head. The world dissolved. Kairos did not see with eyes. He saw with remembrance. He stood in another time. Mars was young, its red plains untouched by industry, its skies dim but unmarred by smoke. The Forge architects walked the sands barefoot, chanting prayers not to a god but to one another, to unity, to creation, to shared memory. Their machines were not extensions of control but extensions of thought. Saga, Their forges were not prisons, but gardens of invention, and at their center stood a woman with dark hair streaked in silver, her hands stained with engine oil and starlight. Her eyes reflected galaxies. She was the one whose voice Kairos had heard. The first archivist of Mars, Illyria Voss. She spoke, not aloud, but directly into the space where meaning is born. You know what was lost. Kairos tried to speak, but in this place words were unnecessary. He felt her sorrow. He felt the moment he saw the conclave, once a council of equals, stand before a crisis of identity, the slow decay of memory across generations, the first signs of the silence. They feared not the forgetting itself, but the fracturing, the loss of unity. They chose control. To prevent disorder, they rewrote memory. They erased cultural variants. They purified hymns. They sanctified synthetic liturgy. They replaced shared remembrance with doctrine, and they crowned it with a symbol. The machine god, not born but constructed. Kairos staggered under weight of it. The machine god was not alive. But it was not a god. It was a monument to fear of forgetting. Illyria's voice was gentle. We sought to protect memory, but we forgot that memory belongs to all, not to rulers, not to priests, to everyone who lives. Kairos felt tears burn behind his eyes, not sorrow for the past. Sorrow for the present? He understood. He finally understood. The Nemo engine was not dangerous because it defied the machine god. It was dangerous because it revealed the machine god's origin. Seraphal's voice entered the vision, fractured and distant. You were never meant to carry this burden. Kairos turned. Seraphal stood beside him, not in body, but in remembrance. In this place he was younger, metal, more human. His voice was not harmonized through vox cord. It was simply his. I tried to guide you toward acceptance, Seraphal said. I feared that if you saw the truth, you would break under the weight. Kairos looked at him, not as student to teacher, but as man to man. I did not break. Seraphal's eyes glimmered with something like grief. No, you... Illyria placed a hand on Kairos' shoulder. Not touch, but memory of touch. A child of Mars, you have built something we could not. A vessel for meaning, a way to preserve without imprisoning, a way to remember without erasing. Kairos felt the Nemo engine pulsing inside him, resonating with his very thoughts. But meaning was not enough. Meaning must be shared. He turned to Illyria. What must I do? Her expression was sorrowful. To restore memory to the galaxy, you must open the vault. Kairos waited. Then the vault can only open if you release the lock. Kairos' voice was steady. What is the lock? Illyria's gaze shifted, not to Kairos, to Seraphal. Astra's cry broke through the vision. Ichiro's don't. Reality snapped back. Kairos was kneeling before the crystal pillar. Seraphal stood above him, realization hollowing his gaze. He understood. He was the lock. His memory, his existence, was the final anchor to the old doctrine. The conclave could not rewrite history while Seraphal lived to remember the truth. The vault could not open while he remained intact. If memory were to be freed, Seraphal must be forgotten, not killed, erased. Kairos rose slowly. Seraphal did not retreat. He simply nodded, emotion fragile with tragedy. I hoped you would choose differently, Seraphal whispered. Kairos' voice trembled. I hoped I would too. Astra stepped forward, tears falling like molten glass. Chiros, there must be another way. There must. But Kairos knew there was no must in remembrance, only choice. He approached Seraphal, the mentor who shaped him. The father he was never allowed to name. Seraphal placed a hand, metal, warm from generators, against Kairos' cheek. You are the greatest creation I ever helped shape, he said. And not because of your mind or your will, but because you loved enough to fear forgetting. Kairos' voice cracked. I don't want to lose you. Seraphal smiled, small, weary human. You already have. Kairos activated the Nemo engine's resonance field. Solaria's voice whispered, gentle as a lullaby. Remember him. The light engulfed the basilica. Seraphal's eyes closed, and the last memory of him dissolved into meaning. Not gone, not dead, preserved, but no longer held. Kairos collapsed to his knees. Astra kneeling beside him, the memory vault pulsed open. The galaxy shifted. War had only begun. The vault did not close after Seraphal was gone. It opened. The basilica trembled with a low, resonant hum, an ancient vibration older than Mars cities, older than the conclave, older than the machine god itself. the crystal pillars brightened in waves like stars rekindling one by one. The silence that had haunted the planet for centuries began to fray, unraveling in thin strands. Kairos felt it before he understood it. The Nemo engine, across the void of space on Arc Primus Null, pulsed in response. Memory recognized memory. Meaning recognized meaning. The universe shook, not in sound but in remembrance. Astra steadied Kairos as he regained his balance. His face was pale, and not from exhaustion. It was something deeper, something shaken loose inside his soul. "He is not gone," Kairos whispered, breath trembling. "Seraphil is not lost. He is preserved." Astra pressed a hand against his back, grounding him. "Yes, but not here. Not with us." Kairos bowed his head. He had saved Seraphil, but by saving him, he had lost him. He rose slowly. The vault's crystalline glow reflected in his eyes that now held eternity and emptiness at once. "We have to return to Arc Primus Null," he said. "The engine must be integrated with the vault's lattice structure. If we combine them, we could restore memory to entire civilizations." "Undo the silence, undo the erasures." Astra nodded, but her expression was not one of triumph, it was worry, because Kairos no longer spoke of preservation. He spoke of restoration on a galactic scale, and restoration could become control. The choir of Iron Angels regrouped as Kairos and Astra left the Basilica. Behind them, the vault continued to glow, quiet, patient, waiting. Above, the sky of Mars burned red. The Titans were still advancing. The battle was not over, but something had changed. The Mechanicum no longer fought to stop an idea. They fought to stop a revelation. They escaped Mars not through force, but through remembrance. The Nemo engine had altered Kairos' mind. His memory mapped into patterns too fluid to predict. He recalled fault lines beneath the Forge City's old smuggling conduits used during the Dark Age of technology, forgotten rail tunnels carved beneath the planet's crust. He led Astra and the choir into the deep veins of Mars, into the arteries of the machine world itself. They passed through cities of rusted pipes and sleeping engines, through servers humming with orphaned data, through silent temples where tech priests once sang to the stars before they learned to fear what stars remember. When they reached orbit, the Orison of Embers took them aboard with silent precision. No pursuit ships were launched. Not yet. The Conclave was not finished deciding how to kill a man who had just proven that history could be rewritten back into truth. The voyage back to Arc Primus Null was quiet. The choir worked without words, repairing armor and recalibrating implants. Astra watched Kairos, not the genius, not the innovator, not the exile, but the man caught between love, memory, and transformation. His eyes no longer held the same softness they once had. He had looked into memory itself, and come back changed. "How much of yourself did you give up?" Astra asked softly, one night as they stood near the ship's observation window, stars drifting past like embers in a cosmic wind. Kairos did not look away from the void. "Only what I could not keep." "That is not an answer." "You know," he agreed. "It isn't." Astra stepped closer. "You're afraid." Kairos' jaw tightened. "Of what I may become," she continued. He turned then, not defensive, not angry, tired. "Astra, if I stop, everything we know will be forgotten. Entire cultures, entire histories. Love, hate, triumph, sorrow, everything that ever mattered. The silence will spread, the galaxy will become empty, and no one will even remember it once was full." Astra placed her hand over his. "And if you continue?" she asked, voice barely audible. "Or what will you become?" Kairos did not answer, because he no longer knew. Arc Primus Null welcomed them with violet storms and whispering wind. The Nemo engine pulsed at the heart of the valley, waiting. The choir re-established perimeter scans. Astra prepared resonance calibrations, but something in the Forge Valley had changed. There were others here. A group of tech priests, pilgrims, renegades, seekers had arrived while Kairos was away. They had followed rumors, intercepted encrypted transmissions, traced whispers through underworld channels. They were drawn to Kairos not by doctrine, but by belief in the right to remember. Among them was Magos Hestian Var, an old colleague of Seraphil's, a man of quiet voice and gentle manner, his augmentations elegant rather than imposing. Because we remembered what the Conclave tried to make us forget. Kairos felt something flicker inside his chest. Hope, perhaps, or the memory of it. Var approached the engine and placed his hand upon the crystal resonance node reverent. "This is no weapon," he whispered. "This is salvation." The other priests murmured in agreement. Astra watched carefully, but did not interfere. Kairos inclined his head. Then we built together. The Forge Valley filled with life. Hymns rose again, not of worship, but of making. Sparks flew, engines roared. The Nemo engine grew, not vertically, but outward, its crystalline spine splitting into branching networks, weaving into the valley floor like roots of memory, spreading across worlds yet unseen. Astra saw the pattern first. It looked like a star map, or a nervous system, or a constellation of souls. Beautiful, terrifying, alive. The Mechanicum loyalists began forming something like worship, but not of Kairos, of meaning. And Kairos, who once feared being forgotten, now feared something else, being remembered as a god. When work paused, when the valley dimmed, when the wind moved softly between memory towers, Kairos was studying the vault resonance signatures when he noticed a code progression repeating where it should not, a recursive encryption. Subtle, elegant, hidden. Someone had accessed the Nemo engine core, someone inside the valley. He opened the data stream, a message unfolded, encrypted in old Mechanicum prayer cant. I did not come to follow you. I came to save you. Before you become what they already believe you are. Kairos' blood ran cold. Not with anguish. He knew the signature of Mago's Hestian Bar. Kairos found Var standing at the valley's edge, overlooking the dark horizon where lightning crawled across distant clouds. You accessed the core, Kairos said. Var did not deny it. I saw Seraphal's memory in the lattice echo. The older man murmured, I saw what you had to do. I saw what it cost you. Kairos' voice tightened. Then you know why I cannot allow meaning to fade. Var nodded. Yes, which is why I must stop you. Astra arrived behind Kairos, silent, hard hammering. Var turned to her not with hostility but sorrow. He doesn't see it yet, Var whispered. The Nemo engine is no longer preserving memory. It is shaping it. The more minds it connects, the more meaning will become unified. Individual memory will collapse into shared memory. Identity will dissolve into collective identity. Astra's breath caught. Kairos froze. Integration. What you seek to prevent, Var said, you are becoming. Kairos stepped back. The valley wind howled. Astra spoke, voice trembling. What Kairos? Is it true? Kairos did not answer. Not because he refused, because he did not know. The Nemo engine pulsed behind him. Slow, patient, alive. Var took one step forward. I will not let you become the god they fear, he said gently. Then he raised a neural disruptor. Astra cried out. Kairos moved. The choir appeared like shadows of iron. In one swift motion, Var's body fell, not dead, but unconscious. The choir stood in silence, awaiting command. Kairos stared down at Var, at the man who had not hated him, at the man who had tried to save him. Astra's hand shook as she reached for Kairos. Say something, she whispered. Kairos looked at her, and for the first time he could not tell whether the engine was echoing his thoughts or creating them. War, when it returns, does not arrive as surprise as an answer. While Kairos struggled with the revelation Var had laid bare, while Astra watched the Nemo engine's pulsing light with growing dread and devotion alike, while the choir of iron angels held silent vigil across the valley, Mars had already begun to move. Not in secret, not in hesitation, but in doctrine. When the conclave acts in unity, the Mechanicum becomes inevitable. They sent no warning, no envoy, no demand for surrender. The night sky above Arc Primus Knoll tore open with the burning trails of descending warships. The Red Crucible fleet, a legionary armada used only for purges of absolute doctrinal threat. Astra saw the first ship break atmosphere, and her breath lodged in her throat. They were not merely coming to destroy Kairos, they were coming to sterilize the entire world. The choir responded immediately, ranks aligning into geometric defense formations. Electro-axes hummed to life. Plasma rifles glowed in the deep violet dark. The ground trembled as defensive pylons activated across the valley, generating domes of shimmering refractor shielding. Kairos stood at the center of the valley, looking up, not in fear, not in rage, but in recognition. They have decided memory must die, he said softly. Astra turned to him, voice tight, brittle, human. And what will you decide? Kairos did not answer, not yet. The first orbital bombardment struck the mountain ridge beyond the valley. The explosion split the horizon open into a column of violet flame. Shockwaves rippled across the sands. Metallic dust lifted into the air like glowing embers. Then came the dropships, hundreds of them. Skitterai legions poured out, steel-limbed infantry, war masks glowing with targeting sigils, precision-wired ranks moving in perfect unison. But Kairos continued, voice steadying into resolve. But to do that, I must change the engine. Astra opened her eyes. The lattice is already active. If you change it now while resonant. Kairos nodded. Yes, it could collapse. The memories could shatter, meaning could scatter into nothing. Astra held his gaze. And if you don't change it? Kairos looked toward the valley, where the choir continued to fight with devotion bordering on sacred. Then meaning survives, he whispered, but identity does not. Astra reached for his hand. What do you need me to do? Kairos looked at her, really looked. Not as guardian, not as anchor, not as witness, as the person whose memory mattered more than any history. Stay with me, he said. Astra nodded. Always, the Nemo engine answered that. Kairos extended his neural threads into the central lattice, Astra stabilizing emotional resonance to prevent overload. Together they began to alter the core schema, not to unify memory, but to partition it. To allow shared meaning without loss of self, to allow It was delicate, it was dangerous, it was beautiful. Outside, the battle reached crescendo. The choir of iron angels kneeled, not broken, connected. Skitarii forces halted, not by defeat, by uncertainty. The Nemo engine pulled. A wave of memory, not thought, not data, but recognition, washed across the battlefield. Skitarii dropped their weapons, not by command, by humanity. For the first time in centuries, they remembered who they had been. A father, a sister, a teacher, a friend, a child. War hesitated. And in hesitation, there is meaning. Migos Var awoke. He saw the battlefield. He saw the Nemo engine stabilizing into something new. He understood. Kairos had not become a god. He had remained human and chosen humanity. Var whispered, voice breaking. Forgive. Kairos whispered. "Oh, remember me," the Nemo engine harmonized. The valley glowed like a memory finally spoken aloud. The war paused. Not ended, but paused. Long enough for the galaxy to remember that it could choose. The valley was quiet in the aftermath. Not silent, never silent, but quiet in the way a battlefield sometimes rests between breaths. The choir of iron angels stood motionless, their weapons lowered, their bodies glinting with the residue of plasma fire. The Skitarii legions, those tireless soldiers of the Mechanicum, had ceased their advance. They did not kneel nor surrender, they simply stopped. Because memory had returned. Fragments, just fragments, but one Skitarius, designation D47, stared down at his metal hands as if seeing them for the first time. A flicker, his child's face long gone. Another soldier wept without tears, their emotion too large for exhausted circuitry to fully express. The Thanatos siege automata powered down. The Dooney crawlers lowered their cannons. It was not peace, it was remembrance. Kairos watched from the ridge above the valley, wind pulling at the edges of his cloak. The Nemo engine glowed behind him like a star reborn. Its crystal spines pulsed slowly, no longer pushing identity into unity, but holding meaning like 1,000 constellations, separate, distinct, connected by gravity rather than force. Astra stood beside him. She did not touch him. Not yet. "Do you hear here?" she asked quietly. Kairos Noddy, 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 Kairos nodded. Their memories, what remains of them, returning in fragments. Astra's voice trembled. You did it. Kairos did not answer, because did it implied completion. Completion meant the journey had ended, and Kairos could feel the journey was about to fracture again. The first sound of resumed war was not a cannon, it was a prayer, a deep, resonant, mechanical chant rising across the skies, broadcast from orbit, amplified 1,000-fold through Vox beacons. The litany of the machine god, the conclave had made its decision. Astra looked up. Warships eclipse the sun, dozens, no, hundreds, too many to reason with. Among them move colossal silhouettes, shining like blades of moonlight and dread, Ordinatus engines, weapons designed to rewrite landscapes, weapons used only when the Mechanicum declared absolute extermination. The Red Crucible fleet had not failed. So the conclave could prepare something final. Kairos' voice was soft, barely heard over the rising hymn. They will burn the planet to glass, not for victory, for erasure. So memory dies with us, Astra whispered. Kairos met her gaze. Yes, she turned, searching his face. You said the engine is no longer consuming identity, that it preserves meaning without taking the self. If that's true, if you have truly solved it, Kairos shook his head slowly. It still requires anchor, a living consciousness to guide the resonance. Without that, meaning collapses into noise. Astra's heartbeat faltered. You mean someone must bind themselves to it? Kairos did not speak. He didn't need to. She understood. Someone had to become the stabilizing principle, the remembering mind. Someone whose identity would remain intact, not overwritten or dissolved, but permanently tied to the lattice. A caretaker of every memory the engine would preserve. A steward of meaning. An eternal witness. A prison of remembrance. Astra inhaled slowly, feeling the weight of it settle on her bones. Then you were always meant to become that, she said. Kairos looked away. No, you are back at her. And she understood before he spoke. You are. Astra stepped back. No, Kairos stepped forward. Not forceful, but certain. You are the only one who can do it. You understand meaning wider than I do. You see value not as shape but as breath. You are human in ways I have already lost. Astra's eyes filled not with sentiment, but with horror. You are asking me to become eternal, to never forget, to never escape, to never sleep. Yes. Yeah. And you ask this because you love me, Kairos' voice cracked. Yes. Astra shook her head. But Kairos, listen to yourself. He did not answer, because he had, and it was killing him. The Nemo engine pulsed. The conclave's chant grew loud. The first Ordinatus cannons charged in orbit, stars flickering with unstable plasma signatures. Astra closed her eyes. She remembered the first time she met Kairos, when he was still more human than Idea, when he looked at the Nemo engine like it was a puzzle and a salvation and a sin all at once. She remembered him touching crystal lattices like they were sacred. She remembered the boy inside the man, terrified of being forgotten, desperate for meaning, brilliant and fragile and furious and gentle. She remembered loving him. She remembered being loved, not worshipped, not idealized. Which is why she could not allow what he asked. She looked at him, truly looked, and said, no. Kairos froze. Astra, she stepped closer, not in hesitation, but in absolute clarity. You ask me to become eternal. but eternity is long enough. If I enter the engine, I will watch empires rise and fall, stars die, galaxies shift. I will remember you long after your name is dust. That is not preservation, Kairos. That is isolation. Kairos swallowed. His throat suddenly too small for air. Why cannot lose? Astra's voice broke. You will lose me more completely that way than through death. The wind howled across the valley. The Nemo engine glowed brighter, responding to emotional resonance. The Conclave's artillery arrays warmed. Kairos stepped forward. I cannot hold the engine together without you. Astra placed her hand on his cheek, the human one, the one still capable of warmth. Yes, she whispered. You can. Kairos shook his head, tears burning, voice shattering. I know, I am losing myself. Astra smiled, soft and aching, and I have been here to remind you that you are still human. Kairos broke, truly silently, without collapse, but with the stillness of something irrevocably changed.
Astra leaned her forehead to his, then spoke the final truth. And now you must remind yourself. The first shot fired. A beam of white plasma split the sky. The valley erupted in alarm. The choir reformed ranks. Var stumbled from the medbay, shouting warnings. The Nemo engine pulsed like a heart bracing for trauma. Astra stepped past Kairos, toward the engine. Kairos reached for her, but she raised her hand, and he stopped. I will not bind myself to eternity, she said, but I will help you finish this. How? He whispered. Astra looked at him with the calm of someone who has accepted that meaning is stronger than mortality. And not all memory must last forever, she said. Some must end. Some must be allowed to fade so that what remains has weight. Kairos inhaled, a slow, sharp breath. Understanding dawned. To stabilize meaning, one must also choose what should be forgotten. Astra placed her hand on the engine. It lit. Not in blinding radiance, not in triumph, but in acceptance, she whispered. We choose what matters. The Nemo engine harmonized. A wave of resonance surged outward. Across the planet, across the void, the conclave ships faltered. Their hymns stuttered. Their minds filled not with fear, but with memory. Memories of what the Mechanicum once was, before control, before erasure, before the machine god was built as a cage. Some voices screamed, some wept. Some went silent, but the war did not end. It shifted, tilted, balanced on a knife edge. Astra stepped back, breath shaking. Kairos caught her before she fell. Their foreheads touched. She whispered, "And now finish it." Kairos nodded. The Nemo engine pulsed like a star preparing to ignite. Above, the Ordinator's cannons recharged. Below, choir braced. The galaxy held its breath. The end had not come, but it was close. The sky above Arc Primus null pulsed with the light of dying sun. The Conclave's warships, suspended in low orbit, formed a black ring against the starfield. Iron halos circling the world below, each vessel bearing the authority of the Martian faith. Their weapons glowed with the power to unmake landscapes, to erase memory through obliteration. But they hesitated, not because they had been stopped, but because they remembered. The Nemo engine's resonance wave had traveled far, too far, beyond the valley and into the orbiting fleet. Machine priests and Skitaria commanders alike had felt something break open inside their minds, something once sealed behind doctrine and ritual and chant. They remembered lives before obedience, dreams before duty, names before numbers. Even so, duty still held. Remembering did not erase loyalty. It only changed its shape. Kairos stood at the heart of the valley, the Nemo engine pulsing behind him like a second sun, crystal spires glowing with layered memory. Astra stood beside him, her hand still resting lightly against the engine's surface, her breathing shallow but steady. The choir of iron angels formed a protective ring, silent and still as statues carved of starlight and sorrow. Magos Var stepped forward, his voice quiet, reverent, trembling. "You have done what we could not. You broke their order, not by force, but by remembrance." Kairos did not feel triumph. He felt the weight of every memory that now lived inside the engine, the laughter of children long dead, the final breaths of forgotten martyrs, the hopes of civilizations erased by time and fear. He could feel them, because the engine was no longer separate from him. He was its anchor, its vessel, its voice. Astra touched his arm gently. "You're drifting again," she whispered. Kairos exhaled, shaking the fog of memory from his focus. "I can feel too much." "You must not become it," she murmured. "You must remain you." Kairos nodded. But he did not say the truth. He did not know if that was still possible. From the sky, a transmission descended. a single frequency, pure as a blade drawn across glass. The conclave had spoken its final decree. Narcon Kairos Valthrin, custodian of forbidden memory, breaker of sacred forgetting, you will dissolve the engine, or we will dissolve you. Astra stiffened. Kairos lifted his head. His voice rose, not amplified, yet heard across the valley, across the fleet, across every mind still linked by the engine's residual resonance. I will not erase meaning to preserve comfort. I will not let the galaxy decay into silence so belief may remain unchallenged. If history is a wound, let us heal, not amputate. Silence followed. Then a second voice, familiar, broken, Seraphil's voice, but not spoken from lips, spoken from memory. Each rose. Astra's grip tightened around his sleeve. Kairos swallowed hard. Seraphil's memory was present, not embodied, not reborn, but echoing within the engine's lattice. Not an identity, a shape of meaning. The echo did not order, did not instruct, did not judge. It simply said, be certain. Kairos closed his eyes. Certainty was a fragile thing, but the conclave did not wait for him to find it. The first Ordinatus cannon fired. Light tore open the sky. The beam struck the valley's outer ridge, annihilating stone and metal in an eruption of molten glass. The shockwave roared across the plains, flattening structures, throwing choir formations into disarray. The ground quaked beneath Kairos' feet. Ferstra staggered but did not fall. Kairos lifted his hand. Not in command, in connection. The Nemo engine responded. It unfolded. It unfolded. Not physically, but in resonance. A wave of shimmering memory rushed outward. Protective, binding, remembering. Choir soldiers regained formation, moving not by link, not by programming, but by meaning. They were defending not Kairos, not the engine. They were defending the right to remember. Skittery legions on the enemy side faltered. Some lowered their weapons, some screamed in conflict, some fired anyway. The second barrage came. This time, it hit the valley directly. The ground split, a crystalline spire cracked, memory spilling like shattering stained glass into the air. Kairos gasped, feeling every echo inside him tremble. Astra caught him, voice fierce. You must reinforce the lattice. Kairos reached into the engine and felt everything. Millions of emotional threads, lives, loves, deaths, betrayals, songs, prayers, roaring through him like a supernova. Too bright, too loud, too infinite. He staggered, his identity flickered. Astra saw it, terror blooming across her expression. Ichiro's, look at me. He looked, her eyes, blue, human, finite. He anchored. The engine stabilized. For the moment, the conclave fleet recalibrated. This was no longer war. This was execution. Their next strike would not burn the valley. It would burn the planet. A voice spoke across the sky, cold, sharp, unwavering. Begin atmospheric cleansing. Astra froze. Kairos felt the world tilt. Atmospheric cleansing meant total sterilization. No survivors, no memory, no trace. Arc Primus Null would be erased. Like Hesper of 7, like the Cantus Vector, like every forgotten world before. Kairos felt the echo of Seraphil whisper inside him. And now you must choose. But Astra was already moving. She stepped away from him, toward the engine. Kairos felt dread rise like cold from the marrow of his bones. Astra, she looked back. Her expression was not sorrow. It was certainty. You cannot hold the engine and fight, she said. You cannot protect memory and protect yourself. The anchor must be pure. One mind, one identity, one meaning. Kairos stepped toward her. And no, Astra smiled. Not gentle, not soft. Resolute. You taught me to remember, she whispered. And now I give that back to you. The Nemo engine responded. It knew. It opened. Light engulfed her. Kairos lunged. The choir restrained him, not by command, but by understanding. Astra placed her hand upon the core. Her memories blossomed into resonance. The sound of laughter in dusty archives. The feeling of ink-stained fingertips. The warmth of holding another's hand in candlelight. The way Kairos' voice softened when he spoke of fear. She whispered into the lattice. Let them remember that they were loved. The engine pulsed. The memory anchored. Astra's body stilled, not dissolved, not erased, held, preserved as meaning. Not frozen, not gone. Kairos collapsed to his knees. He did not scream. He simply whispered her name, as if speaking it would keep it from fading. Astra. The sky ignited. The conclave fired. The Nemo engine rose like a star, and memory struck the world like dawn. The beam broke upon the resonance field, scattering into harmless radiance that cascaded across the atmosphere like auroras of remembrance. Light rippled across the fleet. Scudaria wept. Tech priests collapsed to their knees. Titans halted mid-stride. They remembered, not doctrine, not creed. Everything. The conclave had lost, but Kairos had not won. He had broken. He rose slowly, on unsteady legs, on borrowed breath, on memory that no longer belonged fully to him. Astra was everywhere now, in every memory, in every meaning, but no longer beside him. Kairos looked at the Nemo engine, a cathedral of remembrance now bound to a single anchor. He had preserved her. But preservation is not life, not presence, not touch, he whispered. I remember. The engine pulsed, as the valley prepared for the final reckoning. The world did not fall silent after Astra entered the Nemo engine. If anything, the valley became louder, as though memory itself had begun to speak. The crystal lattice thrummed with echoes of her presence, each pulse a reminder of warmth, of humanity, of a voice that had whispered truths instead of orders. Kairos stood at the engine's base, his hand pressed to the crystal surface, feeling her there, not trapped, not gone, but dispersed. A constellation of meaning, too vast for flesh, too gentle for endless machine recursion. She had become the chorus that steadied the Nemo engine's resonance, the tide that kept memory from consuming itself. Her sacrifice had saved him, and yet he had never felt further from hope. Magos Var approached, his footsteps slow, deliberate. His face was etched with the weight of understanding that came only when grief and clarity joined hands. She is not suffering, Var said quietly. Kairos did not look at him. I know. Then why does your voice shake? Kairos closed his eyes. Because she chose eternity, he whispered. And I cannot follow her there. Var bowed his head, not in reverence, but in sorrow. Outside, the war had not ended, only paused. The conclave fleet had halted bombardment. Their commanders were fractured, their convictions shaken, their memories unstable. Some remembered ancient truths, some remembered loss, some remembered nothing, and that emptiness terrified them more than any enemy. Confusion rippled across their ranks. But fear was growing stronger. Fear of the Nemo engine, fear of Kairos, fear of what remembering might be. And fear, when cornered, always lunges. The choir of iron angels stood in formation along the valley walls. Their stances were steady, but something in them had changed. Their movements were slower, more deliberate, as though thoughts were forming behind their empty masks. The emotional fragments Kairos had preserved within them were reshaping, reforming, remembering. One choir soldier turned their head to look directly at Kairos, not by command, but by choice. Kairos felt it. A question, a plea, a spark of identity. The Nemo engine responded, but he did not, because if he told them who they once were, they would shatter. The weight of a life remembered all at once could crush minds forged for obedience. They needed time. Time Kairos did not have. The sky rumbled. A new ship descended, not a warship, a conclave barge, black, silent. It landed on the plateau above the valley, no weapons primed, no cannons raised. A single figure disembarked, descending the stone ramp with slow, measured steps. He wore no armor, no augmented battle plating, no ceremonial mantle of power, only red robes old and simple. The fabricator general of Mars had come himself. Kairos felt his breath leave him. The fabricator general's face was hidden behind a simple visor of polished steel. No expression, no voice. But presence radiated from him like heat from a forge, immense, ancient, terrible. He looked not at Kairos, he looked at the Nemo engine, at the living memory of Astra, at the anchor of meaning. Then he spoke. I did not come to destroy you. The valley wind froze. Kairos stepped forward, voice low, wary. A no? Then why send the fleet? The fabricator general inclined his head fractionally to measure the cost of your conviction, to understand whether you could be unmade without consequence. Once away. Kairos felt anger rise, slow and cold. And now that you see you cannot erase me without erasing meaning, what will you do? The fabricator general's voice remained calm. I will ask you to end it yourself. Kairos laughed, a sound brittle and sharp. You ask me to end memory. Sharp. You ask me to end memory. No, the fabricator general said. I ask you to end suffering. He gestured to the Nemo engine. This device preserves meaning, but meaning is not always mercy. Some memories destroy. Some are wounds that do not heal. To remember everything is to bleed forever. Astra's presence pulsed inside the engine, soft, steady, listening. Kairos' jaw tightened. I will not condemn the galaxy to forget, and I will not condemn it to drown in remembrance, the fabricator general replied. Choir shifted, metal feet grinding softly against stone. Neither side had drawn weapons. Neither needed to. The battlefield now was choice. The Churros Valthrin, the Fabricator General, said, voice quiet enough that only those close could hear, "You have defied doctrine, shattered silence, altered memory, reshaped identity. You have become something the Mechanicum cannot contain." Kairos did not deny it. "If you continue," the Fabricator General continued, "that the Nemo engine will grow. It will spread. Meaning will bind worlds. Identities will interlace. And eventually, there will be no difference between self and other." Kairos lowered his eyes. He knew. He had seen the edge. He had stood on it. The Nemo engine did not merely preserve meaning. It connected meaning. And connection, unchecked, would one day dissolve individuality into unity. The Fabricator General's voice softened, almost human. And let memory fade naturally. Let loss have meaning again. Kairos felt Astra in the lattice, warm, steady, waiting. A memory rose. Her voice, "You taught me to remember. Now you must remember what it means to be human. 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 Unified. Not unbroken. Human." Kairos looked at the engine, at the constellation of meaning Astra had become. He whispered, "I cannot destroy her." The Fabricator General nodded slowly. "I did not ask you to destroy her. I asked you to release her." Kairos froze. Astra pulsed once, and sprite clear, not pain, understand. She had known. She had always known. Her sacrifice was never meant to be permanent. It was Kairos who had held on. Kairos' voice trembled. "How do I release her?" The Fabricator General extended an open hand, not to command, offer. "The Nemo engine must break, meaning must scatter. Some memories will remain, some will fade. She will not die. She will return to the world of change, of time, of forgetting and remembering." Kairos looked at the engine, at Astra, at everything. He whispered, "Will she remember me?" A pulse, soft, warm, yes. Kairos closed his eyes and placed his hands on the lattice. He did not ignite the engine. He opened it. The crystal network fractured, not violently, not catastrophically, but like ice thawing in spring. Meaning flowed outward, not as flood, but as wind, as breath, as whisper. Memory dispersed across the valley, through the choir, through the Skitarii, through the Fabricator General, through every mind touched by the wave. And Astra returned to herself. Her body collapsed into Kairos' arms, breathing, trembling, alive. Not eternal, not infinite, human. She opened her eyes. She remembered him. And he remembered her. The Nemo engine went silent. The sky dimmed. The war ended. Not with victory, not with surrender, with remembrance. Kairos held Astra close, forehead against hers. No words, none were needed. The Fabricator General bowed his head. Var wept, silently, with dignity, and the choir of iron angels knelt, not in obedience, in reverence. For the first time in centuries, Mars remembered how to be mortal. Dawn came slowly to Arc Primus Null. The storm-churned skies softened. The winds that had once howled across the metallic dunes now drifted quietly, carrying only the faint echo of something that had finally been allowed to rest. The valley where the Nemo engine once stood was still littered with crystal shards, remnants of its lattice glimmering faintly in the newborn light. Some pieces pulsed softly, holding fragments of memory. Others were dim, dormant, waiting to be discovered or forgotten in time's gentle erosion. Kairos and Astra sat together on the ridge above the valley, wrapped in the silence of a world where war had paused, not ended, but paused long enough for breath. Astra leaned against him, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. She was warm again, finite again, alive in a way she had not been when she was part of everything. Kairos watched the sunrise and wondered how he had missed its beauty before. He remembered it. All the times he had stood under Martian skies, believing himself surrounded by grandeur, by divine industry, by purpose. But he had not truly seen the sun then. Not like this. Not quietly. Not without burning. Astra spoke first. "What do we do now?" Kairos exhaled slow and steady. "We live," he said. Astra smiled, tired, but full of something gentle. "And after that? And then we let ourselves forget," Kairos answered. "Forget," Kairos answered. "When we are ready." Astra closed her eyes. She understood. Because memory was never meant to be absolute. Meaning was born in the tension between remembering and letting go. Below them, the choir moved through the valley. No longer a unified formation, no longer perfect in movement. They hesitated. They paused. They looked at the world as if unfamiliar. Some stared at the sky. Some knelt and sifted through the crystal shards as though searching for something once precious. Some simply stood still, uncertain. They were beginning to remember enough to know that they had forgotten. Kairos watched them, knowing there was no easy path for them ahead. Their identities would return in fragments. Pain and joy would emerge slowly, unevenly. They would have to choose whether to reclaim what they were or redefine themselves anew. He would not guide them. Guidance would become control. Control would become erasure. Instead, he would walk among them when they wished to speak. Astra squeezed his hand gently, grounding him in the moment rather than the memory of it. Magos Var approached from behind, his stride slower than before, as though time had finally begun to weigh on him again. His face bore no disappointment, only quiet clarity. "It is done," Var said. "Not triumph, not lament, simply truth." Kairos nodded. "The Conclave will not forget this." "No," Var agreed. "But they will remember differently now. They have seen themselves reflect in memory rather than worship. The machine god will no longer be a cage for the past." Kairos glanced at him. "And what will they do with that?" Var looked toward the sky, the Conclave fleet still hanging there, silent. "They will debate. They will fracture. They will grieve the certainty they have lost, but perhaps they will grow." Kairos did not ask for hope. Hope was no longer something he required. Var continued, voice quieter now. "And you?" Kairos looked back to the valley, to the place where memory had once burned like a second sun. "I will not return to Mars." Var nodded. "A myth then," Kairos almost smiled. "And not a myth. A memory. And memories fade, change, evolve. I am content with that." Var bowed his head, not to a leader, to a man. Then he left to join the choir, to help them remember how to be people again. Astra watched him go, then turned to Kairos again. "Did you regret any of it?" she asked. Kairos did not speak immediately. He thought of Seraphil's final words. He thought of the choir awakening. He thought of Astra's sacrifice. He thought of the Mechanicum learning to remember and forget without worship. "Yes," he said softly. "I regret that we had to break the world to learn how to live in it." Astra nodded. "But we learned." They sat together in silence, letting the morning unfold. After a time, Astra rose. "We should bury the fragments," she said, "and not hide them. Just give them to the world." Kairos stood beside her. Together they walked into the valley. They gathered the crystal remnants of the Nemo in. Not all. Some would remain scattered to be found by wanderers or buried by wind, but enough to create something new. Not a monument, not a shrine, just a place to remember that remembrance and forgetting were both sacred. They arranged the fragments in a spiral of glimmering glass, each piece placed with care, with reverence, with choice. When they stepped back, it resembled not a machine, not a star, not a mind, but a path, a journey, a story, something that had been lived. Astra looked at Kairos' eyes reflecting the soft light. "What do you think we should call it?" Kairos shook his head gently. "A no name. Let those who find it call it what they need it to be." Astra smiled. "That feels right." They stood hand in hand, the valley quiet around them. Above, the Conclave fleet slowly began to withdraw, not out of defeat, but reflection. They left Arcprimus null undestroyed, unpurged, unforgotten. The galaxy would change slowly, but it would change. Kairos closed his eyes and listened to the wind carrying fragments of memory through the air, whispering softly across stone and metal. He heard Astra breathing beside him. He felt the warmth of her hand in his. He remembered, but not forever. Not perfectly. Not completely. Just enough. And that was enough. As the sun rose fully over Arcprimus Null, casting long, quiet shadows across the new memorial, Kairos realized something he had never allowed himself to understand before. Immortality was not the preservation of identity. It was the continuation of meaning. Meaning lived in memories shared, not stored. In stories told, not archived. In breaths taken beside someone you love. Mortality was not failure. It was context. And memory was not a fortress. It was a garden. Kairos turned to Astra and she to him. They walked forward into the morning, leaving behind the remnants of what had once been eternal. Not to forget it, but to let it rest. And the valley, once alive with war and memory and grief, exhaled. The silence that remained was not emptiness, it was peace.